Sim, tô ligado. I will prepare some food. I don't know if you can hear me. 1, 2. Hello. Ah. Hi, Jimmy. Yeah, I phoned the shop today. They had too much, but the good news is that they're still alive and in good health. I sold them the 2018 small fry of 6 months, 5 months, about 5 centimeters. But yeah, they explained to the customers that to put with guppies or platies, so they say we don't sell them good. You know, almost 10 days, more than 1 week, I sold them to the shop and they didn't sell much of them. And I got so much, like 60 or 80 of the first fry. And yeah, I would show the second and the third prawn. The third prawn is in another room. I'll feed them soon, and so even the small guys, you have a better idea. I'll feed them. Yeah, there's easily 100 in there also. Better, smooth. Yeah. Ah, is the other right. Yeah, good question, Resco. All right. Maybe, Marcus, maybe.
What up, buddy? You got to figure it out. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right.
You have your birds with you?
I think we're getting feedback. Are you running external speakers or you have headphones in?
Yeah, that sucks. My sound is no good. Or I speak in the camera, or I speak in this small microphone. But yeah, I have a reverb with the speakers. Maybe better now?
Yeah, if you're running speakers, you'll get a feedback, and I got about a 15-second delay. So when I'm talking, we're going to hear me repeat myself in about 10 seconds from now.
But here it's fine. It's me. Yeah, like you said, I'm using this small speaker, but I reduce the sound and put them so far away from the mic and the cam.
What you can do, Chris, is if you have any questions or if I would just
here for now it's fine. I just reduce the sound of the speaker and yeah, if I take care, I just hear you enough. If it's fine now, the sound, we can leave it like that. Because if I took off the speaker, the sound will come. It comes from the screen, and that will be closer from me from the mic also.
Yeah, you'll just have to mute. So when I'm talking, you'll just have to mute it on your end.
Yeah. Oh God, they took off one plant. So how are you, man? And thank you for coming. It's really cool to have you. Yeah, you said you don't like to feed on the surface, but I think for guppy or platy or molly, I mean, most of live bears, you can feed them on surface. Because even if you look at the month is up than ice, so I think they can eat and took a bit hair with them feeding. You agree?
I'm not sure, Chris, if you've seen the chat or not. I'm trying to communicate with you there because I can't hear you too well, and I'm getting all of my feedback. So I'm not sure if you've already muted your speakers or not. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I did mute the stream on YouTube. I always do for when I'm being invited in another stream or what. And sometimes it's okay. It depends on the stream. Good material. Gmail.
All right, Chris, you can go ahead and unmute now. I should not get any feedback, so I tried fixing it. See if I can do it on my end. Then you can just leave it the way it is on your end. Let's give it a try. So I see that you are muted, which I'm not going to be able to unmute you. So you'll have to do that here on Google Hangouts. And then I apologize, but I wasn't able to catch that first question that you had asked in regards to, I think it had something to do with your fry. That's about all I caught. So if you can ask that again, that'd be awesome. But I think we have the feedback issue resolved, hopefully now.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see if this is going to get any feedback. Like I said, do keep in mind when we're communicating, I have about a 10, 12-second delay. So if you ask something, just give me a few seconds to respond. And that's just due to my internet and so forth. But I think I have it resolved now, so I should get no feedback. So I fixed it on my end. So I'm not hearing any feedback, so I think we're good to go at this point. And if you can repeat your question, then yeah, I apologize. I wasn't able to.
For the poor material I bring in here. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sorry for that. I hope in the future I will have better material to stream on. So,
no,
again,
you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. It's not a problem. We got it taken care of. So
you're really great, and your material is really top. So, but anyway, yeah. But the first topics I wanted to talk with you is about saltwater. And I would love to have your opinion from saltwater in general, except some exceptions like clownfish, horsefish. That's the three only I know that we can reproduce in captivity. But for most of the saltfish, it's like, I mean, before when I was was interested in the hobby, it was frequent to pay one fish for 8 or 9 that were dying behind the scene. So even it's terrible for the poor fishermen. They sometimes dangerous methods, even dangerous for themselves. It can be deadly work. They're not well paid. They make a lot of profit on those poor fishers. So that's something I disagree with it. And and finally, where some have the luck to stay alive and to find something. I mean, home in the shop. until the buyer will take them home, there is chance that the saltwater fish will reproduce themselves. So it's always a loss for the nature. And yeah, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, a great topic, definitely to discuss. First, I guess, thanks for having me on. I mean, I do want to appreciate you for doing that. It's definitely an honor to be on here and chat with you. It's one thing chatting and communicating over keyboard, but it's a different thing to be a little bit more personable in this sense. So as far as your question there with saltwater, I would say to me, I'm not a huge fan of saltwater, not due to any potential controversy, due to the fact that a lot of these are wild-caught specimens, and there is more and more that we do find, even in the United States. So here in the States, as far as captive-bred species, especially like certain species of your clownfish and so forth. But for the most part, most of those, of course, you are paying that cost due to the fact that those are being, hand-caught, for lack of better terms, and then introduced into our home aquaria. I just don't necessarily, I'm not too fond. I tried the whole saltwater thing myself, and I still technically still have a saltwater setup. But if you put $20 of freshwater plants in front of me and you put $1 million worth of corals in front of me, I'm going to go with the $20 of freshwater plants. And that is really due to the fact that I'm conditioned, accustomed to for over 20 years of dealing with freshwater. So it really comes down to pure personal preference for me. It's not that I have anything against. Where I have an issue and a concern, and that goes with animals in general, just due to the fact that we're a very family-oriented. We do a lot of rescuing projects and so forth with things outside of aquatic life. So as long as people are providing the appropriate environment and adapting whatever it is, if it's wild caught, because there's a lot of freshwater wild caught specimens. I mean, obviously that's how they were introduced into the hobby, several hundred years ago. And now we see more and more of captive bred, hand bred, homebred species of freshwater. I'm definitely more for that. But I think it definitely comes down to really personal preference. If there's anything in specific that you're wondering, like I said, I'm not a huge saltwater individual. I tried it out just due to the cost, especially with hard coral. The cost just doesn't justify the means. And for me, if I'm spending $400 on an 8-gallon setup, I could spend $400 and introduce like a whole other fish room in freshwater with that. So I'm always going to be a freshwater guy. I only honestly tried it out. My recommendation is don't do it because somebody else wants you to do it. And that really comes down to, and that was for me, I'm being brutally honest, is the fact that somebody encouraged me to at least try it out. So I gave it a try, and sometimes you don't know until you try it. It just doesn't tickle my fancy to do saltwater. It's actually very boring to me, to be honest with you. The personalities with the fish just aren't there. These guys, you've seen it enough. I mean, I can interact with these guys all day long. I can pet my fish. I just don't really care much for saltwater in that sense. Not that I'm knocking on anybody if they like saltwater, because there's a lot of people out there that are saltwater individuals. I wouldn't say it's any more difficult. Yeah. I just would say it's a little bit more costly. But as far as that misconception, thinking it's more difficult, if you've been doing saltwater, I guess the way I look at difficulty level is if you've been doing it for 20 years, you better dang well know what you're doing. And that could be vice versa on the other end of the spectrum if you're a freshwater or a saltwater individual. So I think difficulty level really comes down to exposure and experience and a lot of trial and error. It depends on how much time you want to invest into any specific project, like with Geophagus or discus or other cichlids or live bear species. The more you invest, not only financial,
and discus
time-wise.
But it looks like saltwater. What I'm doing now with my discus, in the meaning that I produce. I mean, I mix tape water. I just let sit 24 hours to declinate. I'm taking tape water, 50% around for my water change, but I produce 50% from our water. And yeah, of course, I will mineralize it with special salt from pressed discus salt, and even for my shrimps, I use Dunlop salt.
Sure. A lot of that comes down to adaptation and talking about. To me, that's where I will sit down with somebody in person and have this conversation. It gets very complex because what you're talking about is with certain things, people are like, how can you possibly hatch out, you know, a certain fish, whatever it is, in those conditions? Because TDS told dissolved solids is whatever is compromised and made up within your specific environment. So being the fact that we're on a municipal water source, it's going to be different. Every one of my tanks is going to be, it doesn't matter, tap is tap, but the mineral and the, you know, the compounds and everything that are made up in each one of my tanks is going to be slightly different than that to the next. There is certain reverse osmosis process that I'll go about. Not to say I don't do that. My main thing is simplifying the hobby. That was the whole focus, besides dealing with PTSD and chronic pain and everything else for the channel, but really simplifying the means, because I want to be able to encourage other hobbyists coming into it that it is possible without having to go to the extent of using rainwater and RO water and talking about like osmotic pressure and dealing with certain salinities. Like when I used to breed Mycogeophagus over a decade ago, how I would actually get those guys a hatch a little bit faster, believe it or not, was using Epsom salt, because it now changes the overall osmotic pressure within from a embryo state to, you know, to when they're actually eating through the egg sac, to the point, and it's transitioning them over from one environment to the next. So what I do now is I'm finding, for instance, same situation, I'm not using Epsom salt. I'm actually just using cycled aquarium water. And then that's how I'm actually raising them out. And then I don't have to use any methylene blue. It's slowly
you can use catapult leaves also.
Say that again, Chris.
Prevent fungus also. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I was obliged. First, I work in a small. I have only a few tanks, so I don't have so much tanks that you. That's the first thing. So I do all my water change by hand. And the first of all, after my Curry Pandas, yeah, I was obsessed also with that was a completely ramp, a bad issue with my electric GBR. Fish are trying to keep. There are special varieties of Apistogramma, I mean, rams, like balloons one, electric ones, gold ones, neon gold. Well, I was crazy about these guys, and especially even the balloons ones. I'm still in love with this guy. I find it beautiful. It's not a natural, I mean, it's a hybrid selection. But yeah, the thing was like that. Above this tank, I had some special guests. After 2-3 days, that even after a long trip to taking back home, it's second hand. I don't have new tanks. Oldest one, yeah. I still have one new tank, but all the rest above second hand. But anyway, and the guy said to me, "Hey man, if you like, you can have the sand." I said, "Okay, I take it." As there were crushed corals in it, and that was a ramp, a big problem for my ramps also. So I give a lot of money on buffers, and of course the corals was taking back the effect. It was zero effect because of the. So I spent so badly buffers to get my pH acid and soft water. And yeah, the thing that sucked me that it's that you can't keep your to like 4 or 5. You know, if you reduce your pH, the buffer will reduce you mostly KH also. There is from pond, some branch for pond fish only working on KH, but it's not that easy to find. But anyway, yeah, this sophisticated to try to. I'm agree with you when you say simplicity. It go against my all my stupid buys for nothing, and end of the run they're all dead. Were dead, so I get getting upset. But I find out also after a while that there was some crash corals.
I wouldn't necessarily. It's not necessary, obviously, with most of your Epistogramma species, because believe it or not, they all fall in the same family. I get a kick out of it anyway. You know, when somebody says, "Hey, I want to try out Epistogrammas," and they tell me that they have like a German blue ram, and I'm like, that falls in the same family.
The electric balloon one is, believe me, this guy is sensitive.
Most of them are going to be within that same range as far as water parameters. I don't necessarily use crushed coral with any of my rams because obviously you're talking.
It was a mistake. I took it off. It was the. I didn't know there was crushed corals in it. Neocardinas, all right, but not for Cardinas, not for Discus, not for Amazonia.
Yeah, crushed coral is, I look at it in two different aspects. You have one that offers a good buffering component to increase the overall alkalinity versus the opposite end of the spectrum is more acidity. I think too many people focus on the terms of PDS, pH, pH. I honestly don't care about any of that. What it comes down to is just experience and knowing what you have. So my simplest rule of thumb is I have 1 pound of crushed coral per 10 gallons of water based on our municipal water source, and it works across the board. Anything that I want to buffer, not only for overall hardness level to get it to that appropriate point with certain Neocaridina species, African cichlids, other cichlid species, snails, because not only is it, I think people look at like cuttlebone or eggshell or crushed coral, they want to instantly add it just to raise their pH, quote unquote, and they're missing the big purpose. That's 30% of it. The other 70% of it is, to me, is even more important. So, is a calcium content distribution that's offered within that water, because the shrimp will feed off from it. It helps with the carapace and the shell structure, and same thing with your snails. They'll, believe it or not, they graze on it. So that's why I personally recommend utilizing crushed coral for other forms. Because I notice, again, based on our municipal water source, between 18 and 21 days, I find that it balances itself out. And I've had systems going now for 5 or 6 years, and I don't have to do nothing with it as far as my buffering component, using that same initial crushed coral that I've introduced into the tank. You know, I think every year or so, you can monitor it. And it really comes down to the psychology of your fish and understanding and reading your fish's behavior. Same thing with shrimp or snails. The first thing that we're going to be able to see, obviously, as humans with our eyes, is, especially with shrimp, how are they molting? Are they over molting? Are they under molting? Are they dying off during molting? Those are key indicators that a lot of times you have a potential of not, maybe you're doing everything right as far as what you feel with water changes and everything else. I really think it comes down to a lot of that is just improper balance of calcium, because that's one of the most important aspects. For 12 plus years now, I've been breeding shrimp. Is I have the Heteropoda species, which is your carbon release strains, and I can breed those guys in the thousands. And I have literally 0 die-offs. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It just comes down to experience, and I know what works. I understand, and I think it's really just paying attention to not just setting up a tank just to set it up, but actually enjoying what you do. And for me, that's why I spend hours a day in my fish rooms. And I kind of went down to manual versus automated. I used to have a lot of automated setups, and unfortunately I learned the hard way, because you start to kind of take it for granted, and you get a little lazy and complacent. And I think that's where us as fish keepers need to be concerned. When you start getting too complacent, I'm not saying these are automated, so I'm not trying to sound hypocritical, but with some of the more sensitive species that I breed, about for a certain shrimp or fish or whatever it might be, then I do strictly manual. So that means I'm actually, when I'm doing a water change or doing maintenance, I have to actually focus on the tank rather than just turning the valve and letting the automation do its thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a topic I can go on about weeks.
That's a great point, man. But if you like, you can do Sulawesi also shrimp. I mean, that's
Say
a
that
little
again.
bit
I'm
difficult.
sorry, Chris.
Sulawesi shrimp. You know, the special one with the.
Yeah, I haven't kept those just because I'm not going to invest that kind of money into it. I haven't personally kept those. I know people that do. But I'm not going to say that they're necessarily any more difficult. I think, again, difficulty comes down to how much time you want to invest in something, not just emotionally, physically, and financially. How much do you want to give attention to?
A bit higher temperature, but they will enjoy crash corals for sure also. The alkaline pH.
I'm sorry, say that again.
They will enjoy your crash coral, and I mean, yeah, they like soft water. They will really enjoy basic pH.
The other thing I would recommend is sometimes people are like, I don't have a lot of people over, that's why I don't, because I'm an old school guy. That's why I always say I'm like pre-1990s when it comes to fish keeping, because I'm always going to fall on the end of the spectrum of being a guy that has a ton of algae on my tanks, mulm, detritus. Those are guys that are successful in the hobby. Most old timers, ton of them.
That's important for your. It's really important for your baby shrimp also to have some biofilm.
Yeah, and exactly. So, if somebody comes over and they want to do like a tour or visit or something like that, the first thing I'm going to advise them, I'm not cleaning my tanks. So, of course, now doing YouTube, it's one of those things where you're always going to get flack. Well, why don't you show off more of your tanks? I'll show you my tanks, but you're not going to be able to see what's inside them. I can see what's inside of them because I'm looking at bird's eye view when I'm getting in there, but you can
find a compromise. You clean just one small window.
I will never compromise my hobby to sake the livelihood, and I know what's has worked for me through the years. So yeah, exactly. That's the key thing. I'm not going to compromise the benefits of my ecosystem that has been developed for months, if not years, in order to produce a video. That's just never, to me, that's always going to be a thing.
If you have biofilm on the three windows, literally one small one, the front one, if it's the small one, you still have the three those glass with biofilm. I think that's okay.
You can also, with certain Caridinia species, they're also going to need, obviously, calcium distribution. So the other thing is, too, if somebody asks me, well, is that contradictive? If you're talking about pH buffering,
right.
You can balance it out.
There is a lot of stuff.
You still can reduce the overall hardness level to more of an acidic level and still introduce crushed coral. It's fine-tuning it. There is ways around it. There's certain tricks that go and balance that out, because I have to do that with some of my setups. Is they'll see that I have black leaves. They'll see that I'm offering driftwood. I might have like fluval peat granules in there. I might have some crushed coral in there, and they'll be like, "Isn't that like counterproductive? Is it one overcompeting the other?" Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's what I want to happen. They're balancing themselves out. And again, it's just kind of fine tuning it, because I want that calcium distribution in there. And to me, I will never change. I don't care what products out there. I'm not knocking on companies, but again, a lot of people waste their time. Like carbon, for me, wasting money and time. Why are people using carbon? It's just, if you want to remove chemicals or something like that from your tank, I can see it. But if you're trying to use it as like a skimming, like a
Dutch
tanks, in your tank, then you shouldn't have to use carbon unless you're not doing what you're supposed to do as far as husbandry when it comes to your aquariums. Because if people are doing their routine and actually maintaining their their water chemistry, then shouldn't have to use carbon unless you're trying to remove like a chemical or something from it that you might have been medicating, your fish with. And I can understand that, but I haven't used carbon.
Justin from H2O say carbon. Well, if you produce plants, yeah. So.
It looks like, sorry, I wasn't even paying attention to. I wasn't paying attention to chat here. Looks like you're getting. I can hear the feedback. It must be coming out of your speakers there, Chris.
I'm sorry.
All right, so I see what you put in chat here, Chris. But yeah, I mean, I can understand. I mean, I use a fertilizer, a liquid fertilizer, once a week. That's why I'm not concerned as far as carbon, because I can introduce it that way. But even if I don't use that liquid fertilizer, my plants grow just fine with no carbon at all. I've done it for years before I even started using that liquid fertilizer. In out of respect, I won't mention what fertilizer that is, but yeah, I mean, I've talked about it. I mean, if somebody really wants to know, they can look at it, because I've talked about it before. But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to preference, I think. I mean, if it works for you, then don't change it. It's one of the situations. It's not broke, why fix it? Yeah. Mark said, "Hi, Jerry. How you doing, Mark?"
And yeah, what about food? You said you only feed one time, but I feed like 3, 4, 5 times for my discus, the juveniles, and the fry. When they're growing out, it could be 10 times a day.
Fry is completely different. That's apples to oranges. Fry is, of course, you're going to be feeding multiple times a day. Else they're not going to live. Now, when it comes to full-grown, even sub-adult species, so non-juvenile, so once they get to a certain age and appropriate size, I always recommend underfeeding and overfeeding. The reason that is most people aren't familiar with it, but some of these hybridized parrot species and your Severums and Oscars and other South and Central American cichlids are very susceptible to ulcers and hole in the head. And I've tested this time and time again. I've talked about it lots of times, and I've proven it due to the fact that I didn't change anything in my water chemistry. I strictly changed the diet and the way I was introducing their food. And I've had 0 issues in a year and a half to 2 years with 0 hole in the head. And that was strictly because I cut back on what I was feeding. I reduced more carbohydrates and not as much protein. So what I do is I utilize 3 different foods. I use once a day. I usually feed them right around this time, so they're actually due for a feeding, usually around 6 o'clock our time. And it just helps me remember. And I'll do that 5 times a week, and I'll usually skip feed twice a week. And what that will do is I'll cleanse their system to make them not only detox, get all that junk out. And I think more humans need to do that too. If I used to drink when I was younger, like 4 gallons. I used to drink 4 gallons of water a day.
Are you becoming Muslim?
So when you're urinating clear, that's a good thing. That's what you want to see. So my fish are healthy. You know, people can do whatever they want to as far as feeding, but I'll never change the way that I'm feeding because I know if the way I look at it, I know I'm a good fish keeper if I can maintain my fish for 5 or 6 years. Because most fish, as we're aware, in captivity. Not to say you're not going to have some that are going to live beyond that time frame, but if we're realist and being real with ourselves, most fish aren't going to live much farther beyond 5 or 6 years. Yes, I've had fish that have lived longer than that, but for the majority, even if we do everything we can, so as long as I'm getting my fish to survive for 6, 7+ years, I'm not going to change nothing. That tells me I'm doing something right. So
For sure, but
that for me, it just comes down to
sometimes I can't resist. You know, they look at me, they come to me. Even when I open the door, they already come to the top.
Yeah. I can see. I mean, some.
Yeah, Phaidon, the Geophagus, they're special because the transit is quicker than a normal fish. So I have to take care.
And it gets hard because, you know, they want, I mean, they're looking at me, they're like, feed me. I'll take this for what it is, but I don't have that same attachment like I used to with fish. And I think a lot of it goes to the fact that 90% of my setups are all breeding setups in order to offer to other individuals, either through donation or through sale. But you know, when it comes down to it, I guess when you have 65+ aquariums going, and that doesn't include all my fried racks and everything else, I mean, there's only so much attachment. The most attached I have that would probably hurt me the most is if I lost my ghost knife. The ghost knife is probably the closest to me that I truly consider, not that I don't consider these guys a pet, but I think it really comes down to the exposure that I've lost in a lot of livestock.
You can touch it, right? It would give you electric shock if you touched it.
Say what again?
Are the electric fish this ghost knife?
I'm sorry. I
will write it.
Yeah, type it down. Can you? If you don't mind, when I'm talking, I'm gonna mute your end. Not just because I'm getting feedback. That's why it's hard for me to hear. Oh, I'm not going to be able to mute you, Chris, because you're the one hosting it, so you would have to mute it. But as far as knife fish, give electric shocks, yes. So they do. So if you go into a local fish store and you see, like, since we're talking about ghost knife, if they keep multiple ones in a tank, they're, in a sense, even though you can't see it with your eye, they are shocking each other constantly. And then over time, even if you obtain something from one of those tanks, you brought one home, introduced it, over the longevity, they're not going to last very long. I've done it before and I learned the hard way. I learned through a guy who's been in the hobby for many years, and he's like a walking encyclopedia of just about every species between fresh and saltwater. So I learned that from that particular individual because it was brought up many years back. I said, why don't you keep your ghost knives together? I see a lot of local fish stores that do that. And then he broke it down for me and explained to me that they actually will shock each other, believe it or not. So that's why he recommended, because I actually lost one that I picked up at a different fish store. I had it for a period of time, and, you know, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, you know what? I did everything I'm supposed to do. I know my water chemistry. Not my first rodeo. I've been in the hobby long enough. And he said, Jeremy, chances are it's not anything you did wrong. It's first thing that was asked. He goes, Jeremy, now I need to ask you, were these ghost knives kept multiple in one tank? And I said, yeah, there was probably like 20 of them. He's like, oh my goodness. And then that's when he broke it down to me and was actually explaining into great detail If you guys want to know, it was actually through the watercolors tour that I did on the website a few months back. And that was actually, I brought that specific question up to that specific individual. So you can always check it out. Elaborates a little bit more into detail. But this has been an individual who's been in the hobby for many years and has ran a fish store successfully for a long, long time. Probably one of the most knowledgeable that I would say that I know personally in the hobby. Let's see here. I can't almost touch my, I can almost, yeah, my discus will let me touch them. I love to feed my fish by hand. Oh, absolutely. Agree with you 100%. If you want, while we're on here, I can, I'll feed these guys. I'll see if the ghost knife will come up. I'm going to sanitize my hands first, and I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. If that's something you'd like to see, I should be able to get, I call them Ghosty, so I don't really name a lot of my fish. Sometimes the kids do, but I'll see if I can get them here for you on camera if you'd like to see that. I can probably get them to feed out of my hand. But you'll have to give me just a couple of minutes here. I got to take a facility break, and then yeah. So I'm not sure how long you're going to stay on, Chris, but just let me know. And yeah. I answered this question here. That being said, I bought reverse osmosis. I'm assuming you mean RO reverse osmosis for my Cardinias and discus. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, you can definitely trigger. Don't get me wrong. From what I was saying previously, I agree with you. You can definitely, by changing some of that pressure and so forth, wouldn't really classify as osmotic pressure, but that's a whole nother conversation. But with that being said, I mean, definitely, yeah, I agree with you. You can definitely trigger even your mycogeos and other fish, oftentimes by doing like a 20 or 40% water change, because that's going to kind of, it's going to shock them, but not to the point where you're going to send them. I wouldn't recommend obviously doing that with shrimp, but if we're talking fish, I've done that in the past before. I'm going to, believe it or not, end up eventually here in the future investing back into a RO unit, a full 5-stage deionization RO unit. So my my overall total dissolved solids should be in the range of 0 to 5. Once we start pushing beyond 5, I don't feel that it's really true. 5-stage is, you know, but that's just my thoughts. I've seen some TDS and RO get up and upwards of 15 to 20 parts per million, but if I can keep it in the range of 0 to 5, be more true, which I kind of like because that tells me there's some mineral content in the water itself. But yeah, Carlos is laughing. Can you not hear me, Carlos? Am I talking to myself? Let's see here. Oh, okay. I just want to make sure you guys could actually hear me. Chris Roma got nice RO unit. Yeah, my fish. Oh, my fish are funny. Got you. I'm like, am I sitting here talking to myself? But yeah. So, Rob and Amanda have a beautiful, very, very expensive RO unit, and I know Lucas obviously just invested into a pretty big one too. But for me, it really comes down to not the. It really comes down to the micron filters. The unit itself, I mean, you can make one of your own if you wanted to. It's not too difficult to do it yourself style cartridge, or you know what I'm saying. Lost my train of thought, but it really comes down to me is the microns. Whatever micron filters you're using is the most important factor. So with that being said, I need to go, and I'll be back here in just a few minutes. Yeah, and we'll see if we can get these guys to feed out of my hand. So, all right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that little feeding extravaganza. Yeah, the Ghost Knife obviously playing camera shy, but you can just goes to show and validate that they're very interactive. I mean, they're not trying to attack you or anything like that. So, let's see. But yeah, I need to hop off from here, Chris. I'm not sure if you have any other questions or what have you, but thank you for having me on. But I have to get back to the kiddos here, so I wanted to at least show you guys that. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and yeah. All right, Chris. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you very soon. Thank you again.